and heat it up first. Yeah, this may look like I'm cooking up some like heroin or some meth or something, but I promise it's not. Kia ora koutou, and welcome to Experience Bar, where we're turning video games into cocktails. My name is Jack, and I'll be your bartender for this evening, so I show you how to make a drink to put the violence back into punch. The blood punch from Doom Eternal. Let's get started. So, this drink is inspired by the blood punch ability in Doom Eternal, a handy little trick that you can use to kill a whole bunch of weaker enemies at once, or knock the weak points off of some stronger enemies. I like using them on cyber mancubuses the most, because I cannot stand the fact that they exist in general. They are my least favorite enemy in the game. Now, Doom Eternal doesn't exactly have a lot of drinks in it for us to draw from, so instead we're mostly being inspired by the name Blood Punch. But I feel like the drink that we're making, which, spoiler alert, is going to be a punch, is quite thematically appropriate, because punch is supposed to be a communal drink, and with Doom Eternal's emphasis on the multiplayer aspect, it seems to fit. And I promise, I really do promise, we are putting a little bit of rip and tear into this drink. Maybe a little fire as well. Let me show you what I mean. For Blood Punch, what you're going to need to do first is grab a mixing bowl and fill it with the peels of a Mayer lemon and a navel orange. If you can't get both of those or either of those, any orange or lemon will do, but those two are the best. Just peel the entire thing, pop it in here. Try not to do one long piece. You want this to be nice and broken up. You're then going to add 3/4 of a cup of Demerara sugar. You're then going to muddle these or rub them together. I prefer to muddle because I feel like it really gets the sugar in there. You basically want to make sure there's as much contact as possible between the sugar and the peels. What's going to happen is the sugar is going to draw out the oils of the lemon and the orange skin. It's called an Oleo-Saccharum, and it's a very, very important part of traditional punches, which is what we're making today. Unfortunately, it does take a little while, so you usually have to wait at least half an hour, or preferably overnight, for this to kind of do its thing. But if you're in a rush, you don't absolutely have to. I do highly recommend taking the time to talk to your guests, because of course if you're making a punch, you're making for a large group of people. Just wait that half an hour, it really will make all the difference. Next up is the spirits of this drink. We're going to be adding 1 cup, yes, a full cup of rum. This is the most expensive drink we have ever made on Experience Bar. I am using Karuba rum, but if you can get plantation rum and you're willing to spend the little bit of extra money it costs, it is absolutely lovely. So definitely try that out if you can. But Karuba or any other aged rum is fine. Next, you're gonna add 3/4 of an ounce of brandy. Yes, this is a big drink. This is gonna make multiple servings. You can use cognac if you want, but again, you don't absolutely have to. I wouldn't recommend making this with really, really expensive ingredients. Just mid-range is absolutely fine. So, like I mentioned earlier, we are making a traditional punch, in fact a combination of 2 traditional punches, one called a Charles Dickens punch and the other one called a Smoking Bishop. Now, a Charles Dickens punch is rather unique among punches in that a required part of the recipe is to set it on fire. Seems kind of appropriate for Doom Eternal, and that's why we're using it for this one. So, to do that, you're going to get a tablespoon, you're going to get a lighter. A match can work, but you have to be a little bit careful about getting ashes in your drink. Maybe that seems appropriate for a Doom Eternal drink, but it can also work if you only have matches. I do recommend a lighter though, for one simple reason. When you're trying to light alcohol on fire, you really need a lot of fumes, right? That's actually what lights, not the liquid itself, it's the fumes. And if it's cold or even room temperature, it won't necessarily work. So what you need to do is get a tablespoon, nice wide one so you've got lots of surface area, and heat it up first. Yeah, this may look like I'm cooking up some like heroin or some meth or something, but I promise it's not that. There we go. So now we have lit that. You won't see it, but you will hear it. It will pop. And you just have to very carefully pour it into the rest of the drink. Once you hear that pop, you might not be able to hear it, but it's definitely there. Let me show you what we're working with here. This is nutmeg, right? And this is actually another part of a typical punch. We're actually going to put quite a lot in. There you have it. That's now cooking. Excuse me, I've now got nutmeg all over me. So that's now cooking. You need to leave that for 3 minutes or until the fire goes out, but I recommend 3 minutes. And you will also, by the way, make sure you're making this in a nice fireproof bowl. This is tempered glass. That means it's microwave proof. But yeah, just be careful that it's thick and powerful. You don't want this cracking, because the last thing you want is like burning alcohol all over your table. All right, so we're gonna leave that for a bit. What that flame is going to do is going to draw the oils out of the citrus. It's going to help with that by heat, and it's going to help cook and caramelize that sugar. Supposedly, I haven't actually made this without the fire bit because it's too fun to do it this way. But yeah, that's supposedly what it will do. It's an awfully fun thing to do for your friends as well, especially when you got the old nutmeg to show that off. Never get sick of that, it's so cool. And once that's been done for about 3-ish minutes, or until you're too nervous to let it continue, just grab a saucepan lid or a wet tea towel. I recommend a saucepan lid because it's a lot safer, and just pop it over the top. Just give it, a little bit to make sure that it's completely burned out. Yep, that looks good to me, and pop it off. Do not stick your fingers in to make sure that it's done, because this shit is now, I can tell you, it's extremely hot right now. You may be wondering where the word punch actually comes from. I know that I did when I was researching this. Well, no one seems to really know. It could be a borrow word for the Hindi word of 5 that I'm not going to try and pronounce because I will butcher it, but that actually is a reference to 5 being the number of ingredients in a traditional punch. But other people seem to think that it's got more to do with the name of the casks of alcohol that things like rum were transported in around the 17th century, which were called puncheons. Personally, I think it's more like the puncheons thing, but because no one knows, you can make up whatever you want. So if your guests ask, just make up something believable, like I just did. Anyway, moving on. Citrus. This is the next part. You know those nice orange peels and lemon peels that we just did? Well, slice up that orange and that lemon and pop it into your nice hot punch. I cannot tell you how hot this damn punch is. Be really careful, guys. Pop those in there. So those 5 ingredients that I mentioned earlier being part of a traditional punch, you can actually remember them through a handy little rhyme. We've got 1 of sour, which is the citruses that we just added, 2 of sweet, that was the sugar, the Oleo-Saccharum that we made, 3 of strong, that's our brandy and our rum, 4 of weak. Now, typically that would be water, or later black tea, because punches were British and we can't help but put tea in everything, apparently. But in this case, we're drawing some inspiration from that smoking bishop recipe I mentioned earlier, where we are adding our weak to be wine, red wine, pinot noir red wine specifically, because I wanted a doom eternal drink to be very potent. I didn't want to water it down too much with water or tea. You're going to put a whole bottle of this stuff into there. Now please note, ladies and gentlemen, that I did not pour the whole bottle in there, despite me saying that you should. You definitely should, but we're filming and I don't have enough money to buy all the bloody wine that we need. So we've only done half of this so that we can get our close-ups later. But yeah, just put the whole bottle in. Don't do as I say, not as I do. Now that we've added that wine, we've got those tannins in there. That kind of, when you like drink some red wine and it kind of feels like a little bit furry on your tongue? That's tannins, which is also why black tea was used in punches as well. It kind of captured that bitter element. Good punches kind of cover every single major flavor profile all in one go. I think that this does a quite good job of that. Plus you get a little bit of nutmeg spice in there as well. But at this point, we're good, we're ready. The blood punch is ready to drink. We're just gonna give it one little mix with this spoon, because this is what I have. Again, it's still gonna be a little bit hot, so just be a little bit careful. We have added a heap of wine to this, so that will be absolutely fine at this point. But we're just gonna stirry, get that last lot of nutmeg off the sides and mix that sugar in, because you do not want this to be too undersweet, because otherwise the lemons will overpower you with their sourness. But at this point, the blood punch is ready to drink, but we're not going to be picking this up and just slurping it back, as tempting as that might be. We are going to be separating this out into a separate glass, so grab a wine glass is absolutely fine. If you've got those fancy handled punch glasses, you can just scoop it into there if you want, but personally I'm going to pop it into this wine glass. Now you'll see this glass has ice in it. If you've made a particularly big batch of this, maybe double this amount, what you could do is add ice directly to the bowl, then people can sip at their leisure and add back to their glasses at their leisure. But because I made a smaller amount, and because individual ice cubes actually dilute this too much, what you really want is big ice cubes, I'm just going to pour it straight into an iced glass. Feel free to do the same if that's easier. And I'm just going to pop this over to the side so you guys can have a good old look at the actual drink. Now, this being a punch, you don't actually have to garnish it or anything. You could with like a little orange wheel or something like that. But personally, whenever I'm sharing a drink with people or just have a wine glass in a big party, I always lose track of it. So that's why I've invested in these little skull boys. And considering the purple skulls place in Doom Eternal as the Onslaught pickup, this feels appropriate as a garnish. So we're just going to pop that on there. And now we know that this blood punch is mine. But these drinks don't happen without some serious support from our community. So I'd like to say thank you to all our patrons, in particular Max Bauman today. Cheers for the drink. Yeah, I can hear the death metal playing in the back of my head. Okay, so as I mentioned before, the drink that we made today only used about half the amount of wine. As you add more to this, you get slightly more tannin flavors, but everything else comes through pretty much as it would normally. You get the rum in there, you get the brandy, that kind of raisiny flavor from the brandy is really complemented by the wine. It's very heavy on the sweetness, this one, but again, as you dilute that will get a lot less pronounced, and you'll start tasting that orange coming through, that lemon coming through a lot more heavily, and of course the nutmeg. See, I've always thought that the people in the past putting nutmeg into like all of their drinks was insane. It was absolutely crazy. But now that I started making traditional punches, I can see why they do it. It just adds this certain earthiness, this certain, I don't know, it's like savory flavor, that baking spice flavor to it. It's very, very nice. You may want to strain your drinks through one of these, because you can end up, especially as you get to the bottom of the bowl, you can end up getting a little bit of nutmeg kind of sludge, I'll call it, at the bottom, and it's not super nice. But usually when you've got ice in there, that kind of stops you from getting to the absolute dregs anyway. So it all works out. But overall, very tasty drink, hits all of those main sweet, sour, strong, savory and bitter flavors that we're kind of looking for in a punch. Yeah, really good, and really, really good for bringing along to a party. If you want to be the most popular person and get invited back to basically every house party, bring the ingredients to make this, especially with that flame coming up. But thank you so much for joining me. I've been Jack Stone. This has been Experience Bar. That was the Blood Punch. I hope you guys have enjoyed yourself half as much as I have. If you'd like to see more of our work, you can catch us on Reddit, on Facebook, on Twitter, on Discord. Basically anywhere you guys are, we are as well. We are producing new content every couple of weeks. So hope to see you then. But until then, cheers.